I'm Ariana Grande.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Erivo.
And you're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Visit bpn.fm to discover more.
There's a cat over here. There's a cat over there. And the wrong one died. And the wrong one died.
Welcome to The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of catastrophe. I'm your host, Mike Abrams, and today we have another amazing guest. He recently finished up touring on the international tour of Cats, and then also the Asia tour in South Korea, performing as the Rum Tum Tugger. So welcome, Ed Kingsley Wade, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I am excited to have you because you've been in a couple productions, and I know that you have just already told me that you have a different Jellicle choice, so this always is a great starting point. So let's start at the beginning. What is your Cats history? When was the first time you saw the show? When were you first introduced? When did you see it live first? Like, give me the backstory.
So my first introduction to Cats was when I was, I believe, 7 or 8. I was at school, and my drama teacher wheeled in the television and stuck in a DVD. Sorry, it was a VHS back then.
VHS, yeah.
Yeah, showing my age. And she put it in and she said, I want you guys to watch this. And at the end, I'm going to ask you, which cat do you think should go to heaven? In a very simple form. And we watched the whole thing. And we watched, and we got to the end, and she said, right, who do you think should go to heaven? And I remember putting my hand up immediately, and no word of a lie. And I said, I think it should be the Rum Tum Tugger. And I remember that so well because I thought he was so cool. His number was so fun. He was kind of naughty. And I think as a child, I sort of associated with that kind of like fun-loving, just crazy cat. And I thought he was so cool. And John Partridge he was just legendary in the role. And that was my first memory of Cats. And then very closely succeeded by my second memory of Cats, which I think was probably either a year later or 2 years later. I went to the Edinburgh Playhouse in Scotland. By the way, I'm Scottish. I'm half Scottish. Okay. My parents are English, so my accent might sound confusing. Yeah. So that's just to clarify that for you. I went to the Edinburgh Playhouse in Scotland, and I was sat in the audience and I watched Cats, and I remember watching the first act and then leaving at the interval because I thought it was so boring. And that is the truth. And I remember my godmother took me, and she must have thought I was just the spoiled, ungrateful brat. But little did she know that, or did I know that I would end up doing that very musical and loving it. And absolutely, it completely changed my mind after doing it. I think this was that saying, like, watching Cats is very different to being in Cats. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because you saw it. So it's not like you were surprised by it the first time you saw it live. Like, you watched the movie, you got the gist of it, and you still were like, no, live, it's worse, I'm out. Yeah,
no, I was like, nah, fuck this. No, I think I remember at the time, one of the vivid memories in my mind was the flashing eyes right at the beginning, and these eyes just coming out of the audience, this thing where I was very sort of disturbed by it. And also I was sitting in the upper circle, and I remember at the interval seeing kids going up onto the stage, because back then you could go up and meet old Deuteronomy. And I thought, why can't I do that? And I was like, I turned to my godmother, and I can't remember what I said, but I think she got the impression that I was like, this is not for me. This is boring. But little did we know that I would end up doing it as a professional. It's just kind of crazy.
You're like, if I have to watch it for school, I'll sit there. But if I get to go on my own time when I could be doing everything else, I'm done.
Exactly. You better be paying me to do it. That's what I was gearing towards.
So when you watched the movie, did you, like, in school, did you have any like inkling that you might be in this, like it was a future for you, or was it just like, again, you were just happy that they wheeled in the VHS tape so you didn't have to learn?
That was always a great day at school, wasn't it? When the teacher brings in the television. Days. Oh, the best. Truth be told, no, I don't think I ever did back then. I was so wrapped up with just the life of being a kid. I just thought everything was so much fun. I was sort of fearless as a child. I never really shied away from any task or throwing myself at anything. I loved art. I love expression. And then I remember at about the age of 7, so around about that time, my mum sent me to my first dance class. And I remember just really enjoying it and just kind of being like, oh, I just like that. Because I think you were fearless as a kid back then. No one tells you otherwise until you get a little bit older. What is it? The age of consciousness, when you start realizing what the world starts to think of you and you think of yourself. And back then I was just like, I just dance and that's just what I like doing. And so when I watched the film, I was like, oh, that looks kind of cool, but pass me a rugby ball or a football and, you know, I'm off doing that as well, or playing tennis or whatever, you know. No, I guess a long-winded answer to your question was no. I never thought that I would want to pursue it back then.
It's so interesting to hear you say that, because I've talked to so many cast members now at this point, and especially around this, like our age, same age. And there's a very distinct split between I watched The White Cat and that was my future. You know, like I knew when I saw that moment that I wanted to be a dancer. I wanted to do this. And then there's the other half of this where it was just like, yeah, that was interesting. And then you moved on with your life and ended up back here later at some point. So it is kind of fascinating to hear how like the 98 movie has such a lasting impression on a lot of people. And it was like, for you, it just cracks me up that it was like, no, it was just a day I didn't have to listen. So I loved it at school, which probably would have been my reaction. There's a lot of movies I watched as a kid in school where I'm like, I don't even know. I loved it just because I didn't have to pay attention to anything else. Exactly.
Right. That was exactly it. And I think, I don't know, like for me, I was very lucky in the sense that my mum was, and my dad, sorry, they were both very cultured, and that I went to the theatre. I was lucky enough to go to the theatre quite a lot. And, especially up in Scotland, where we don't have an awful lot, apart from the Edinburgh Fringe, which I'm sure you're familiar with. You know, when that comes along, lots of Scots just descend upon Edinburgh, and we all go and see everything. So for me, like watching, I don't know, maybe I wouldn't want to speak on behalf of anyone else, but if Cats was this totally random anomaly that appeared in your educational time, let's just say, and you just went, oh my God, that really, really took me. You know, I can understand why you want to be a white cat or or whoever. But for me, it was like, oh, this is just all part of the whole experience of being around art and theater and dance and stuff, you know. So maybe it was in there somewhere. It was just, I'd say it was more of a kneading process than an explosive awakening.
Interesting. So fascinating. So let's fast forward. You, like when you got the audition or you really realized that you were going to have a chance to do this role, what was in between there? Was there any other moments with Cats, or was it like you forgot about it from middle school or from, you know, the early ages, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait, I now have a chance to audition for Tugger?
Yeah, it's interesting actually. I mean, between those 2 points, actually, there was a lot of evolution in my own journey. Then shortly after, I got into Scottish ballet, and I started dancing for their junior associates program for 2 years. And then I got into the Dance School of Scotland, and I went there for 4 years, in which I studied musical theatre. And then I got a scholarship to Mountview in London, and I studied there for 3 years. And the interesting thing about the progression is that I started very much in ballet focused and dance focused. And then I slowly weaved into more musical theatre and started singing, and then acting more sort of came out as well. And so I guess in a way, maybe I was kind of steering away from Cats. I feel like you acknowledged at the beginning, just before we got on, was that like, it's more of a dancing show, you know, it's kind of that thing. So I think Cats was very much in the forefront, especially when I was at the Dance School of Scotland, was in the forefront of the mind of people that were dancers, I would say. Whereas musical theatre people, they were like, oh, wouldn't it be hilarious if you were in Cats one day? Yeah. And we kind of joked about it at college and stuff as well. Just because of the way the colleges were kind of streamlined, you know, there was very much the dancer colleges, and then there was the acting colleges, and then there was like the singing musical theatre colleges, which was the one I went to, the third one. So the idea of being in Cats was pretty out there. It was pretty kind of an audacious thought, I'd call it. However, when I started getting into the industry and I realized that, oh, okay, I can dance and sing and act, I can kind of do all three. I'll never be a featured dancer, and but I can still move around the stage. I then had an audition for Cats, and I remember it. And I remember going to this audition space and singing, and I remember doing the dance call and thinking, I remember my agent calling me and be like, "You're in for Cats," and I thought, oh, for God's sake. I'm not going to get this. I remember point blank thinking, I was like, I'm never going to get Cats. There's no way. I'm not a dancer. That was my interpretation of it. my understanding. And then I did the dance call and somehow made it through, but I was happy to. And then I went through to the next round and I sung in front of Chrissy and Grinrods, who cast it here in the UK. And it kind of went well. And then I got another recall. And then I didn't get it because this was a time when I didn't get Cats. So I auditioned for Cats once and it didn't go my way. But I remember getting far in the process and enjoying it and being sent up for Tugger and Skimble and also Monkastrap.
Wow.
So they weren't sure where to place me in the mix. And I think it all just came down to that, just I was not really sticking out. I wasn't a standout for any particular role at that time. Cut to a few years, 2-3 years later, in 2019. And I was in Fiddler on the Roof in the West End at the time. And things were going good for me. And I remember going in again and dancing again and really loving it, really, really enjoying it a second time around the audition process, and then singing. And that time I was seen only for Tugger. It was great fun. And I remember Peter McCarthy, who was the MD on the European tour, he was there. And I've always enjoyed kind of like doing my approach to roles is always to kind of do them true, but also like find my way of doing it as well. Like I would love to do the character justice and take direction, but I also want to embellish it with a bit of me. And when it came to the singing and all the riffing and stuff, I just decided to take it off in a way that I realized now hadn't kind of been done before. So Peter really latched onto that and was like, oh, this is interesting. Let's try it like this. Let's see where you can go. And then I remember a couple of weeks later after that, just as Fiddler came to an end, I got the call to say I booked it. And I was booked on the Asia tour that was going around China in April of 2020, which couldn't have been quite a worse situation because then the pandemic happened.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because that's it's a role that gives you just talked about the freedom to be able to kind of have a little bit of your own vision into it. And it's like a perfect role for that. I also am curious now hearing like what a hard pivot going from Fiddler to Tugger. That is quite a shift.
It was a real real shift. Yeah, that's a great way to describe it, actually. I always enjoy the challenges. I think, swing me around or like flip me upside down. Like I'll try and thrive in whatever situation. Throw me in cold water, I'll try and swim. It's I don't shy away from the challenge of it. But the fiddler was so great. Honestly, it was such an amazing job. And I worked with Trevor Nunn on that one, and Judy Kuhn and Andy Nyman, and just these amazing like stars as well. And it was just an incredible experience, and one of which I gained a lot of insight from, and especially working with someone like Trevor, who obviously, is so huge. All right, do you know back at those school days when they wheeled in the VHS, I remember opening a textbook, right, and looking at a picture of Trevor Nunn and looking at him in that and going, all right, that's Trevor Nunn. And then meeting him on the audition for Fiddler and looking at him and going, I remember you from my textbooks at school.
I'm sure he loves that. That's okay. So you basically you're auditioned and picked for the 2020. That's not going to end up happening. Obviously there was a US tour that got cut off. That one happened. I think they ended up going to Korea,
It went to Taiwan,
but it was a different group
that's right.
because it was like one of the first things. There's a documentary on it. Okay, so then you now get cast again in the international tour. You go all around Europe. It sounds like for about a year. I'm curious because I've heard a little bit about that tour, and you stopped in some like amazing cities. But then when you finished, you went to South Korea to cover. So is that the exact same production that you went into, or were there changes? Like, what is that going like when because you like had pretty much no break and you went from one to another. I've heard this a couple times, but when you get thrown in as an injury replacement or replacement, how much change do you have to adjust to?
Well, just to address that story, because you're almost completely right with it. Okay. The European tour, I had a clause in my contract to leave after 6 months. So I was able to. So I left in August, I think it was. Yeah, I left in August, and then the tour continued without me. They brought in a great guy called Harrison Wild, who who from what I hear did an amazing job. So big shout out to him. But yeah, no, so I was able to do the European tour, visit places like Berlin, which was, oh my God, Berlin was so cool. We went to Zurich in Switzerland as well, which was amazing. Feel so lucky to have just even been there, but to have worked there and to be in a great production and to enjoy it. Munich, other places like that. It was wonderful. And then I finished the tour there and left that cast whilst they had like a 5-week break in which they put Harrison in. And then they went off and they continued the rest of the tour. And then I was, I've been back here in London, and then that production finished on the Saturday or the Sunday. And I was called on the Friday just before that finished to fly out on the Monday. And what was so weird is I sent a video to the group saying, guys, like, have a great final show. The next thing I knew, I was going back to do Cats. Yeah. It was so strange. But the difference between the two productions was, luckily for me, because I was put in 2 days when I flew out to Korea. Luckily for me, it's very, very similar. However, the set is slightly different. In that it's bigger, it has more levels on the sides of stage. The Growl Tiger number is in, and so is an extended version of the Rumpus Cat, and that comes in Act 1, whereas in the production of the international tour, the Rumpus Cat number was Gus's one in Act 2, whereas there's the Growl Tiger there. So that was interesting. And I tell you what, it was so weird. It was so bizarre having like 6 months off and then going in to do Cats again. I remember in Act 2, Tugger comes on and he sits on the pipe looking down over the backs of the heads of these people. And it was feeling so much like a dream. You know, when you dream and you're in that world and it looks so familiar, but it's different slightly. Yeah. It was exactly like that. That's the only way I can describe it. I was looking at the backs of people's heads being like, no, that is Demeter. It's not the Demeter I know, but I know that's her. And over there's Monk. He looks different, but I know that's Monk. And it was so strange, but it was a very crazy experience, but one that I was very much awake for, which was kind of terrifying as well.
That's kind of an interesting piece I hadn't thought as much about, because the tour, I was with the US tour recently earlier in the year, and they swing in a lot. And so, you're seeing, and I'm seeing a lot of the pictures of them, and I'm like, it's a different person. But with all the makeup and the costume and everything, it's like, it looks like the character. Yeah. And so it has to be kind of almost, 2 days, you said you got put in, has to be a little trippy to see, someone that you probably worked for 6 months with. Yeah. And then a tweak of them who's a totally different human that is now in that costume. Like it's got to be a little bizarre.
It was exactly that. It was very, very strange. But in that as well, it was weird trying to fit my European version of Tugger into the Asian production as well, because there were definitely energy changes. It was an entirely different set of people. There was not one person that I knew from either production. And so it was really, really interesting for me to work with that, discover bits with Misto or interactions with Bomb Ballerina, things like that, which I found really interesting. But one thing that I truly clung to that really meant the world to me is that I changed something in the European production that made it into the Asian production, in the Korea production, and I'm infinitely proud of this, and this isn't a shout out to me. This is a shout out to someone else, because it was their doing. In the production of the international tour of Cats, in the show, Misto does his great solo, and Tugger says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you the magical, marvelous Mr. Mistopheles," and we do that. In the European production of Cats, there was a young actor called Shaquille. And Shaquille came up to me one day and said, "Oh, Ed, wouldn't it be funny if one day you said, 'Ladies and gentlemen, and those of you left to decide, I give you the magical Mr. Mistopheles.'" And what was interesting about this is Shaquille is non-binary. And I thought that was really interesting. And Shaquille played Kara Kapat, and Milan played Tantamar, sorry. And they both came up to me and they said, "Oh, wouldn't this be interesting?" I was like, "Oh, okay, that's cool. Let me try it." So in the rehearsal room with Chrissy, I said, ladies and gentlemen, and those of you left to decide, I give you blah, blah, blah. And I kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it. And then we got into tech in Zurich. And Chrissy was like, came up to me in the middle of tech and said, you know, I think we should change that. And I was thinking, oh, what, just take it out and revert back to the original. I was like, oh yeah, sure. No worries. Of course. Absolutely. She said, no. I think we should change the line. I was like, let's try this. And we tried a few things. We tried things like, ladies and gentlemen, and those of you in between, or everyone else, or it was something to include everyone. And she went, oh, okay, it's not really working. 1 second. So she went off and she phoned Trevor, and Trevor said, try feline and friends. And so then I went on and we tried it, and she said, yeah, that works. And I went over to the Asia production, and that line is now in the show. So rather than saying ladies and gentlemen, Tugger now says felines and friends, which is amazing. And that came from like Chrissy and Trevor, and from the wonderful Shaquille as well. So that was I'm really proud to be like, to have helped in some way or changed the narrative in some way. I think that's really cool. So
yeah, really cool. I mean, again, more inclusive and just a tweak. I think what I love about Cats is that the core of the story doesn't have to change. You can make these minor little things, and the world was built and is there, and you can do these small things, and it's still in the world, like it's still in the world. And it allows you to kind of evolve it without it changing. And that's what's been cool about it, because it's been 40 years and there can be those small tweaks, and some things that have been removed or changed and added doesn't get away from the core of what the show does or is about.
Exactly. And I think that comes down to Chrissy's vision as well, especially because I wasn't able to work directly with Trevor or Jilly on this one, obviously. But to still have Chrissy, who's so embedded in the piece and comes from the true history of it and really understands the piece as well, for her to be so welcoming of that change was just remarkable. She's one of the best directors I've ever worked with, hands down. She just really cares. It's just so, and it makes you care. It's really, I think that's really inspiring. And the one thing I've learned about directors is that if you feel or see their vision, then you get on board with it straight away. So yeah, she's amazing.
I want to ask one or two more quick questions about the Korea tour before we go to talk about Tugger. One thing I'm always interested to hear is when you're joining in, you got 2 days, there's, it's all new people, and it is such a show that you get very close and comfortable with everybody. So what is that like, in the sense of you have to, you go and immediately are brought into this like family, and you've got to did you know, how do you transition from, I just did this with this cast for 6 months that we became close and we had kind of you play off each other moments, to now 2 days later, going to go in and have to figure out those new moments with different cast members. Like, what is that adjustment period like? And how do you quickly do that to, especially with your character? And like, this is my second part of this question is Tugger comes in to disrupt. So it's almost a very interesting one to come in and just kind of come in and also kind of cause some chaos as the new guy. Like, how does that work? Like, it's such a unique part to the show.
That's a really good question, actually. And one that was obviously very interesting, like really literal for me. But it's really funny because you put me in mind of the moment after the White Cat lift. And I remember it was like my first show, I think. Yeah, it was my first show. And I was a bit nervous and still didn't know everybody's names and things. And I just remember like us all moving in towards this, the kind of like the love pit, whatever that pit is called. We're all crawling all over each other. I remember the girl playing Demeter, Anika, she sort of like clawed me and I kind of clawed her. And we were lying down and very quietly, just as we were like drifting there, I was like, hi, what's your name? And she's like, Anika. I was like, hi, I'm Ed. And meanwhile, we just like been clawing and pawing each other. So I find that really, really funny. But for the main part, it was exactly that. It was that disruptive thing. To move on to the sort of second part of your question, it was exactly that. I obviously coming from the European tour and having my own little Ed-isms, as I would call them, and introducing them to this cast, and having I like to use ad libs, and I like little moments and little beats of really breaking down the fourth wall and really getting with the audience and things. that was great to kind of like come in. And I remember Matt Krzanz, who was the resident director on the Korean tour, sitting there when I did Mistopheles for the first time, and just kind of like, he was just giving me this look like, what the fuck? But also like just really enjoying it as well, because that's exactly who I feel Tugger should be. Like you said, is a disruptor. And it was very much that energy for me, and very much for the cast as well. And I think it was great to kind of to shake it up a bit and to stir the pot a little and make people realize that, we are here to do the piece justice. That's fully fledged, like what we're here to do. We're here to uphold one of the staples of our industry, and we have to do that justice. But also that there is much more to be explored, and bravery is commended, and ideas are commended as well. I'm not going to say that all my ideas were great. Like, some of them were trash, and I'm very happy to like go there and fail and get a note. One of my favorite things to do is to get a note, because that means that, as long as it's like within keeping, it's not like, Ed, can you stop sitting on people, or do you know what I mean? Like, can you just stop like being too crazy? That's fine. I won't go there. But if it's, for example, if it's a gesture or a moment or a beat or a pause or something that I've gone, I want to try that way. And a director comes to me and says, Ed, maybe try a different way, or don't do that. I welcome it fully, because again, like I said about Chrissy having the vision, if I can see your vision, it helps me come across. So it was great to be this chaotic force that swept through in a way, but also to be respectful and, aware and present for what was already in place as well. And I felt the balance was struck well. So I was very happy about that. Yeah.
So let's talk about your chaotic force. Let's talk about Tugger. I want to hear I always love to hear what's the note you're given for Tugger? Like, what are you told as the backstory for Tugger? And then what do you add?
Well, I mean, the backstory for Tugger, from what I gathered. Oh, by the way, this is one of the things I love about cats, by the way, is the stories that you don't see or hear or really get to know until you do cats. And because of these backstories that we'll just delve into in a moment, these like relationships and stuff, is the reason that I wrote Cats 2, which is an entire musical that I've written. It's 80 pages. I've got 2 acts. I've got 12 new songs. And we'll go into that in a bit. But one of the things we were given was the information about these cats. So I was given Tugger is Munkustrap's brother. He's the son of old Deuteronomy, and his 3 words were grooming. Oh gosh, I'm really going to get in trouble for this. Maybe we'll skip this bit. Maybe we can just like drop this. No, it was he's grooming, independent, and perverse. And I remember hearing those 3 and thinking, okay, what does perverse mean? And I had to Google it, because I was like, let me just make sure I knew what that meant. But so given that, we were given these words on day 1, and when we went into the rehearsal room, on one of the days we did the exercise where we all become cats. So one cat will get in the middle. Chrissy will say, then, beckon in another cat, and then another cat will be beckoning. And we were all sort of exploring felinity and, just crawling and becoming cat-like and everything like that. And my immediate instinct was to crawl over to Chrissy and just sit over her and wait for her to like do something or just be there. And then our resident director, Dane, I went over and just kind of stood by him. Everyone was still like contained in the circle, but I made sure that I made an independent choice to break away from that and do something perverse. And the whole time I'm just, stroking my collar or, grooming this and taking no care of, not really being there with anyone. But then finding a moment, I remember just thinking like, I just want to burst through the middle of this, as you've seen cats do before. Like one cat will just charge through the middle of them and it'll just kind of upset the norm. I remember charging through the middle and not really caring or being, respectful of anyone other than old Deuteronomy. I feel like the hierarchy of predators is really interesting. And I think knowing who's the alpha, which is very much old Deut, he was the only one I gave, reverence to. But the rest of them, I couldn't give a shit about it. Even though I do fully, I just in the part and in the exercise, it was very much about like this exploring that independence whilst being a little bit indifferent and self-obsessed. It was kind of kind of a dream role, you know?
Yeah.
But it was also, it's a very good safe space to explore that exercise. But that was what I was given. Yeah.
Yeah. What relationships did you add then? Like, where did you gravitate towards the Mistopheles angle or the Bomb Ballerina angle, or a lot of different versions that we've heard? Or did you just kind of change it up every day depending on what you were feeling?
I very much stayed away from kittens. And warmed greatly to Bomb Ballerina. I really allowed a moment of indulgence with her. I think in a very sort of loving way, both with Lizzie Nance on the European tour and Petra on the Korean tour. Both were very, very fine with the relationship and the flirting, as it were, which was great, which really I think worked. And also my relationship with Munkustrap as well was very much one of a younger brother energy. I have a younger brother, so I shaped it a lot on him and his kind of prodding and probing, but love and laughter constantly. Do you have siblings?
I have an older sister.
You have an older sister. So you know that thing where you know each other so well that you know where every single button is. Even if you flick your hair, it will piss them off. It will just annoy them. Or you do one thing. And I really enjoyed playing with that relationship with both Munkustraps that I got to do it with. And I found it to be, and I love that there's a moment in the bows, just as Grisabella's flitting off, we go bye bye, and we sing the final note, cat, bum, and then we go into sort of charging around the stage, and the cats go out into the audience and stuff. And I always like this moment where me and Munkustrap just get back together and we just have a hug and we kind of hug it out. We're we're brothers at the end of the day.
Yeah.
There's always love, and in spite of us bickering or joking over each other. So I like the Munkustrap relationship. The kittens I gave no time to. I kind of thought, I know it elevated my status, I felt, as Tugger. And I think that was about it. Me and Misto, we have I imagined us having secret parties. Just he and I would just go out on nights. We'd just go around and he'd be like, come on, do the trick, because girls love that type thing. He's my magic cat. So yeah.
Nice. We're going to take a quick break for some messages from our sponsors, and then we'll be back for more of The Wrong Cat Died.
Okay. You got to talk about cats too.
Yeah.
So let's hear your version. I have also, I wouldn't say I wrote one. I have an outline of what I had, and I can't write music or any of this stuff. So I have the script of how I think it would be funny to do it, but it's very, I would say me heavy. So it's not very theater. It's a lot of non-theater type of parts to it.
I love this.
But I did write a version of this, but I want to hear yours first, and I could tell you a little bit about mine. Yes. Okay,
sure. Well, mine's quite plot heavy. I kind of, it was funny. I came to writing it through just spitballing ideas with the cast and just joking around about ideas imagine if there was a Cats 2, what would happen? And at one point I had this really dark story where all the cats kept losing their tails, someone was cutting off their tails, and then at the end it was Victoria the white cat coming on, and she's kind of half drenched in blood, and I was a funny thought, but for a split second I was like, let's not go there.
Maybe a little too dark. Yeah.
A little too dark for such a light show. So the version of Cats 2 that I wrote, it starts the very moment that Grisabella flies away, and old Deuteronomy. Well, it starts you hear it up past the Russell Hotel, and Grisabella flies away. The cats, come down and they all start talking to each other. Old Deuteronomy, and you address. And this the thing is in this moment and in these moments where you realize the relationships that the cats actually have to each other. So. Munkustrap calls old Deuteronomy his father, and he says, "My son, you will inherit the tribe one day. It was becoming your duty." And then we learn about Tugger's relationship to Munkustrap, and he's like, "Come on, brother, let's go and get a bowl of milk at the Bull and Yarn." And I say, and Demeter's coming too. So the love between Demeter and Monk, and then there's Bomb Ballerina, and he sort of Tugger chases her around. And then we see cats like Skimble being sent off on a mission by old Dude. We also learned that Gus, now this is the wrong cat that died, because Gus should have been chosen. I'm telling you now, Gus should have been chosen. He's the oldest cat. He's been there his entire life. He's always kept Solomon quiet. He's so sweet and timid and old. He's with Jenny, who like looks after him full time pretty much because he's so old, but he's loyal. He came to the ball. Grisabella just sauntered in. She was the glamour cat, bro. Like she lived this great life. She was off partying. Like she was shit hot. Like she had this wild time. And then as soon as the love ran out, she just came back in and was like, oh, hey guys, I kind of fucked it, you know, can I any chance I could skip the queue? What? Are you serious? Like Gus has been here this whole time. He's been like a father, an ambassador. He might be mean to kittens, but he's still the loving father figure. And he's an old mate. Anyway, I'm very passionate about it. Yeah. I love it. Him and old Duke basically get together and they say like, Duke is like, listen, old friend, you know it should have been you tonight. And he's like, no more of it. Don't worry, next year. Next year. He goes and sits in the back of the set. Meanwhile, like the Mungajer and Robatiza come on and they've like stolen a bag of swag and he's like, stop it. And they go, I knew the tap shoes were too much, because they pull out a pair of tap shoes and stuff. And anyway, there's Gumby comes forwards and she says, I'm fearful of McCavity. I think you should prepare the cats for next time McCavity attacks. And he says, I give you my blessing. Let's prepare the cats for next time. Then also in this time, Mistopheles has been sat at the back of the set this entire time. And in this production, I like the idea that Mistopheles is an angel character that he can't speak. And he's sitting there looking at the moon and the Heaviside Layer, and old Duke with an empty stage says, you can see her up there, can't you, my son? It says, yeah, up there in the Heaviside Layer, the place where you have ascended from, the only place you cannot return to. Meaning that the source of his magical powers is the reason that he is the only cat that can't return to the Heaviside Layer. And also that he's a Peter Pan character and that he never ages. So old Duke also then talks about remembering Mistopheles when he was a kid.
I love that.
You know, that he's this character that never ages, but he's always in amongst the tribe, and he has the source of his magical power. And old Duke thanks him, and he pulls out a windmill, like a paper windmill type thing. And Mistopheles like disappears from behind the set and then appears right beside him. And then he has a ballet. He goes into the windmill ballet. And then old Duke stands and sings a song about being a cat and the importance of family and returning home. And as he goes up to the back of the set to wake up Gus just gently lulls his head, and Gus has passed. And then the music builds and builds and builds and builds. And then across the cloth emerges Cats to a Jellicle tale 7 years later. And we hear this snowy windscape coming in, and Skimbleshanks comes on. And it basically builds from there. So we're looking at the tribe from 7 years later. Skimbleshanks is up in Scotland looking for wildcats to help. We go back to the Jellicle tribe, and there's a new Monkastrap. Her name is Wapiti, and she steps forwards, and she's the new Monkastrap character. Old Duke has passed, so now Monkastrap is the leader of the Jellicle tribe. And there is and then we meet our protagonist, whose name is Artie, and Artie is the grandchild of Gus. And so there is this energy of like, we don't know about Artie because they're a bit different and blah, blah, blah. And then Artie sings a song about not being included. And then all of a sudden this McCavity laugh appears, and McCavity appears in the tribe and points out Artie and says, you shall fulfill the prophecy that was foretold. And what is the prophecy? What is the prophecy? And then when McCavity disappears, Demeter explains that there was a cat prophesies that a Jellicle will overthrow the Jellicle leader. So Artie is then banished. Meanwhile, up in Scotland, Skimbleshank has been captured by the Jellicle, by the Wildcats. And we learn of the resting place of the Everlasting Cat. The Everlasting Cat is the last line of Scotland. And in this cave at which old Deuteronomy led these wildcats to safety when they were being hunted by the humans, old Deuteronomy leads the wildcats there. And so the wildcats say, right, we will help you because old Deuteronomy helped us. And Skimble comes back jumps on a train to come back to London. Meanwhile, Artie goes out into the wild, meets a cat called Felix who lives in a bin, and then they say like, oh, we should team up. Let's go find a cat that was there 7 years ago. So they go to this place called Fat Tom's, And Fat Tom emerges from this like pizza box, and it's the Rum Tum Tugger. And the Rum Tum Tugger the years have not been kind to him. He's covered in like decades of hairspray, and like he's fat and greasy, and he's just completely lost all his like mojo and sex appeal. But he still very much thinks he's like Jagger, but he thinks he's Mick Jagger, but he's more Jack Black. It's how I'd put him. And so, yeah, and then basically teams up with Tugger, and then he says, right, you need someone that's been to McCavity's lair in order to talk to McCavity. Let's go find Mungo Jerry and Rumpel Teaser, who have now gone batshit crazy because they're just so in sync. And they basically all team up, and then it all comes to a head, and you go to McCavity's lair and stuff in Act 2. And McCavity's actually a Sphinx cat. He's like got this great big coat that he takes off, because I believe in one of the early productions, McCavity used to wear this big red coat. So he takes it off, and underneath he's this bold Sphinx cat with like this little podgy belly and things. And anyway, it all comes to a climax in Act 2 when there's a beautiful, huge, big balletic ballet. And in amongst there's lots of other different turns and weaves and bobs, and it just kind of takes.
What's your ending though? What's the ending?
What's the ending? The ending. So the ending is that there's this huge almighty battle between McCavity, Artie, who has been kicked out, saves the day at the last minute when McCavity has Tugger and Munkustrap by the throat, and he was about to fleece. I think, yeah, it's a bit dark, but basically he has Mistopheles, I believe, yeah, and he says, and I'm going to take Mistopheles' powers now. And he's going to take Mistopheles' powers when Artie jumps on McCavity's back, rips off the coat, and there's a bold cat underneath. And he's wearing a collar, and all the cats stop and freeze and look at the collar, and they go, that's a Jellicle collar. That's how you tell a Jellicle cat apart, is because of their collar. And you see this collar on McCavity and go, he's actually the brother of Tugger and Munkustrap, the long-lost brother that was banished, this sort of Hades character that was kicked out of the Poseidon and Zeus partnership, that third brother. And so anyway, Jelly comes along, and she proffers her paw into McCavity's, and McCavity ascends to the Heaviside Lair to be reborn. When it should have been Jelly, it was Jelly's turn to be, sent away. But yeah, so McCavity disappears, and then the whole way through, and then that's it. And then the whole way through is Jelly still sees Gus, like very much with her the entire time. And there's this story that if you are a cat and you're a Jellicle cat who doesn't go to the Heaviside Lair, you remain a guardian to a cat in need. And you remember the cat Felix that we met earlier? Artie. So the whole time, Artie has actually been a Gus cat to Felix has been a Gus cat to Artie. So Artie has had this companion who has been there the whole time, but if you read the script carefully or closely, never actually talks or interacts with any other cat other than Artie. So Felix turns around, and it's this sort of sad little reveal at the end that Felix was a figment of Artie's imagination the entire time. And there you go. There's the whole musical. You can write it yourself. You got the whole story there. So there.
Well, let me tell you. I think there's a couple of things that it gives a climax and ending and conflict that I think sometimes is almost missed a little bit in Cats 1. And so I love that you have a story. Have you thought about, here's the one thing that kind of jumped to my head, because I love it. I hope I have no idea what it goes into producing a musical. Have you thought about 7 years later, there were 6 other than Jellicle choices? Have you made those 6 Jellicle choices?
No. Yes. Very interesting. Good point. One of them definitely being Old Duke. I mean, I want to keep Jelly because I want to keep the Gus connection. And she's sort of the next oldest cat that I can think of. No, I kept Bustopher Jones and Cassandra out of it because I believe that they should appear in McCavity's lair because they are posh aristocracy. And McCavity has these posh and powerful friends. So I wanted to keep them in that world. That's a really interesting one. No, I haven't thought on that, but I like the idea that cats do come back in their times of need. So, for example, to kickstart Act 2, there's a French cat, a French Jellicle, and I wrote this French aria called Le Chat de la Nuit chante la lune, which means the cat of the night sings to the moon. And so she sings half in French and then half in English. So this idea that like other cats of like Jellicle history like weave their way back in. But it's an interesting one. No, I haven't actually thought too much on who the other Jellicles that were chosen to be reborn were and are.
I love it. I love that you also wrote music for it. Like you wrote a full music.
Yeah.
I have an outline. And I did write some like stanzas.
I want to hear it.
Mine is parody. Like I went full parody. You went full Next Cats 2 musical. I went full parody, which is the only thing I'm probably capable of writing. In the US version, there is a Peter, which is Gus's character that just dances in the ensemble. And I've always joked that I think Peter is Saint Peter. And so my Cats 2 is what I jokingly called the Ghost of Catsmas Pass. And I want Peter to bring Grisabella to be like a Christmas story and let her come up before she ascends to the Heaviside Layer and see what that decision does to all the cats. So she goes around with Peter and the two of them go. And then what I got to do is I wrote each cat as almost a flip or a dark turn of where by her leaving, what does that do to their psyche or their character? And so it's like, if it is their mom, what does that do? Or if it was a former lover, what does that do? And I put them in different scenarios. Challenge I ran into is I did this very early in me doing this podcast. And so it's very clear I know nothing about musical theater. I know more now, but like when I started, I knew nothing. So it's like I think I ended up putting one of them on the Knicks, like on a basketball team, and like I had it was not something that was going to resonate with the Cats audience. But I love the thought exercise of if she goes to the Heaviside Layer, who do you like? What happens to that cat the next year? And then my ending is that she decides she wants to spend a year with her family, and then Gus goes, which is how I'd like to end the story anyways. I
love that ending immediately.
So that was my, like, she comes back and has her aha moment of like, oh, I can't leave them. I've got to spend a year with them. And that's how you come back. But you basically do it's a Christmas story. It's like, it's not a new story, but it's the great, like for me, a format for the parody of what happened to each cat. Cause then you can go into whatever character you want and say, this is the turn they took by her leaving. I love that. That sort of, it's kind of Company meets A Christmas Story. Like her own rebirth in of itself, but also a retelling of, or a fleshing out of the characters we already know. That's super interesting, actually. It's like, puts me in mind of Encanto as well. Did you see that new Disney movie? Yeah. The way we see these characters and then, but realizing the relationship and the change that then happens to all of them around this one central character. That's really good, man. I like that. It would be fun. I can't write music or anything else, and I would definitely, but it's the version I would want to do. Yeah, that's so cool. I really hope you get to make that. And I hope you get to make yours. Yours sounds awesome. Like I was entranced as you were telling me. Oh, thanks, man. I mean, I hope so too. I've spoken to quite a few people about doing it, and just like getting hold of Andrew Lloyd Webber and also T.S. Eliot Group and those types of people, because I couldn't possibly proceed without the blessing because of how many toes I would be stepping on. I really desperately want to make it. And we actually had a reading with the international tour. I spent 6 weeks writing it, and I just went into like a kind of crazy writer zone, and just hammered it out. I remember like even after the Tugger number, I have like about a 10-15 minute break, and I would sit on my laptop there. I'd come off stage sweating, and I'd quickly jump on the laptop and just keep writing. And I was writing songs and stuff. But when we did the reading, had some wonderful feedback, made a few changes, some great new ideas came through as well. Then this sort of like, I spoke to my agent about it as well, and I said, "What do you think?" And he went, You're joking, right? You didn't write a musical." And I said, "Yeah, no, I did." And he said, "Well, you couldn't possibly get it off the ground because the rights and things like that. But I would love if on the off chance I could meet Andrew Lloyd Webber one day and just be like, what do you think? Here's the thing. Let me show you it, and we can maybe work on some ideas together." I would thrive at that opportunity. I would love that. Yeah. But hopes and dreams. What a fun way to do it too. Like, I'm sure you got great notes from your cast, because like you all are literally living this every day. So like you could not be more in the like mindset of Cats. be able to give a thought on like Artie and all these other characters.
Yeah, well, again, I mean, like, there's one thing I said, like, right at the beginning is that there's two different versions of Cats, like watching Cats and being in Cats. Like, for me, again, you know, like, let's go full circle with this. When I was a kid watching Cats, you know, in the theater, I was like, I don't get this, peace out. And then again, when I was like doing it, you know, and I got the job and Chrissy gave me the words and we did the workshop, I was like, and then I learned about the relationships. I was like, holy shit, there's a universe in here. It's like this entire musical. Like, wouldn't that enhance people's like perception of it? Like, I have friends, my girlfriend, for example, has done Cats as well, and we all love it because we know it and we respect the piece, and we, you know, so many people have done it that you can start to compare other people's versions of it, and you could admire and know other people's things, and it's just really, really interesting. There's this whole world that people love and obsess over, and there's a reason that the musical has such a fan base as well, because it has these deeper dynamics and stories in it. I would just love to be able to give that some light and, you know, just flesh it out. I mean, this story I've written, for example, like, doesn't have to be wrote. Like, you could encompass stories like yours into it as well. We could, you know, collab on it and just hear what other people would want to see and then write about that. I don't think it's I mean, you know, you shouldn't really touch something that isn't broken because it is so perfect in itself. I'm not saying that it needs to be touched, Cats 1, but if there was an extension pack and be like, it's just so you know, here's something else you could like maybe to enhance your watching of Cats 1. You
would thrive on Cat's Tumblr if you're
Cat's
unfamiliar. It might be a new obsession for you, but there's a group of fans that essentially write as if they're the cat and they have their own unique cats, and I have stayed away from it because I don't want to get personally sucked in because I think I'd become obsessive on it. But there is a group that I don't know how active it is still today, but they would write stories and situations of like real life as the cats. So sounds like you have some new characters that you can bring in. I'll send you some more when we finish and hang up. And
please do.
Get you a little into it.
I'll email you when I'm in too deep as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Come pull me out.
Let's do some rapid fire here to close us out. If you could go on for one day, any character, any cat, whether you could physically do it, male, female, just one track, one day, who would you want to go on as?
Mungo Jerry.
Mungo Jerry.
Why? I want to know what it is like to be that exhausted, singing and dancing that full out in that intense way, to then, you know, do that crazy cartwheel, the iconic thing at the end, and just think how it feels to have just finished that. Like, I think it's an incredible, and also like to have the energy and try and match the energy of, you know, the Rumple teaser. And I think it's just a crazy ass number that, you know, while everyone else is just off stage, like catching a breath or like taking a drink of water, they are there giving it like the whole thing. And it's, I think probably Mungo Jerry. I think it's a feat of athleticism and just all great things.
Who are your favorite and least favorite cats?
Favorite cats and least favorite cats. Oh gosh.
Yeah, ignore people. Ignore actors. Just purely character.
Favorite cats. I think Bill Bailey's a right laugh. I think he's just there for a giggle. He's just running around teasing people. Least favorite is probably Cassandra, because she's so kind of, in my opinion, like she's so up herself in a way. Like she's just kind of like high and entitled. Favorite cat, I think I think he's such a lovable, likable, admirable character. And least favorite, Grisabella. Oh, man, she really did me in there.
Yeah. What's your favorite song in the show?
Memory.
Okay, so don't let Grisabella love her song though.
Love her song though. I think that's why I love it. That's why I love it so much, because it pulls me around. You know, I go, but you sang so well, and I get it by the end. But I feel like that whole song's, you know, it's one of the more iconic songs of the show, and also it kind of brainwashes us, all the cats, to go, she should go. She should really be the one chosen.
My fun question is, since you got to do a little bit of a European tour, I asked this to your castmate Ella, which cat do you think would win Eurovision?
Like, it's an independent song?
Yeah, independent. Okay. Yeah.
What did Ella say? Can you remember?
I don't remember. I wish there was a couple choices. Like, I think there's a lot of ways to answer this. I don't remember exactly what she said, but yeah, I think there's some choices.
Hilarious question. I think Tugger's number would definitely be up there. I think the Rum Tum Tugger number. Misto's kind of iconic. I think that would stand a good chance. But dude, hands down, it's got to be Memory. It's just so iconic. It's the Rise Like a Phoenix. It's just all those great numbers. Those super ballads. Yeah,
I'll add one more for you. I think Skimbleshanks gets a shot.
You think Skimble's in there? Yeah.
With builds a train on stage. Like, I think there's some fun to that.
Yeah, there's some production value in that as well. Yeah, for sure.
I normally ask, this is the point I'd ask you, but you already went on a rant on why you're picking Gus over Grisabella. So I'm just glad that you're Team Gus.
Yeah. Sorry I jumped the gun on that one, but I couldn't.
No, all good. I'm with you.
Yeah, he's been there. He's there. He's the whole way. He's there for the whole of the Jellicle Bull. He has lived an honest life. He's super humble. I feel as though he's never hurt anyone. He never left. He was just kind of in the theatre doing what he loves and just being harmless and sweet and kind. And then Grisabella was just off having a fabulous time. The glamour cat. Her name is the glamour cat. Like, she lived a great life. She obviously partied so hard and just had this great time. But now she's back and she wants redemption and she gets it. And I'm just feel so stuck for Gus.
I love it. This has been so fun. How can people stay in touch with you? Like, when Cats 2 is coming out, what's the best way for them on your social media, or how do they stay in touch with you?
You can find me at Ed Kingsley Wade on Instagram. I think that would be the best. And that's probably the best way to find me. But if anybody wants to, then I'm more than happy to give them a bit more info on anything, Cats related or Cats 2 related. It's been super fun. Yeah,
this has been awesome. Yeah, thank you for being a great guest. I loved hearing Cats 2 and all your experiences and your VHS middle school Tugger selection and everything that goes with it.
Yeah, dude, likewise. I enjoyed hearing your parody as well. And thank you so much for telling me a bit about your life as well just before we got on. I'm super interested. And thanks so much for having me. I feel honored.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being an amazing guest, and thanks everyone else for listening to this episode of The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of the catastrophe. To follow along, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at The Wrong Cat Died, or check out our website, thewrongcatdied.com.